The entire room was silent, but the stares were cruel. Muffled laughter echoed as she tried to hide her trembling hands. The maid, invisible to everyone, had become the target that night. The heiress, with a scornful smile, did not hesitate. The glass of red wine flew against her simple dress, staining not only the fabric, but also her dignity in front of all the elite. No one moved a finger. The guests just watched, some amused, others indifferent. To them, she was just another servant being reminded of her place. Her face burned with shame. Her heart was pounding so loudly it seemed to betray her pain to everyone around her. She wanted to disappear, but the cruelty was just beginning. And it was at that moment, in the midst of humiliation, that a look rose among the crowd. A look that would change the fate of that night, and of the kingdom itself. Would the prince really dare to stand up against everyone, because of a maid? The hall shone as if it were a temple erected only for the elite. Crystals reflected the golden light of the chandeliers, champagne glasses were raised in endless toasts, and every detail of the party screamed power. It was the kind of place where wealth didn't need to be spoken, it was in every look, every gesture, every arrogant silence. There gathered the most influential businessmen, politicians, heirs, and wives who paraded around like trophies. And in their midst, like a mistake that shouldn't have existed, there she was, the maid who would never have been invited, but whom fate had placed before everyone. While the guests talked about alliances and arranged marriages, the young woman's presence was like an uncomfortable stain amidst the luxury. It wasn't just the simple dress or the work-scarred hands. It was the fact of daring to exist in that space, where only the powerful could breathe without asking permission. The heiress, with sparkling eyes, seemed to drink in every second of the scene as if it were a spectacle created for her. And around him, the elite chuckled, pleased to see someone reduced to nothing. But among so many haughty voices and looks of contempt, there was a pair of eyes that watched in silence. Eyes that didn't reflect arrogance, but tension. Eyes that belonged to the prince, the one who could turn a moment of humiliation into an act capable of shaking the entire kingdom. Would he remain silent? Or would he dare to face everyone because of her? The silence of the hall was broken by a dry crack. The glass suddenly tipped over, and the red wine slid in a cruel arc before splashing onto the maid's dress. The fabric, already worn by time, was now marked by a stain that was impossible to hide. The sound that followed was not one of astonishment, but of laughter. Some covered their mouths, pretending to hide it. Others laughed openly, as if the humiliation were part of the evening's entertainment. The heiress approached with slow steps, savoring every moment. Maybe now you'll learn that this isn't your place. The words fell like sharp blades, cutting not only the air, but also the young woman's soul. The maid felt her legs weaken. His hands were shaking. She wanted to disappear, but there was no way out. She was surrounded by luxurious walls and eyes that only wanted to see her fall even deeper. None of the guests moved to help her. They just watched, some with disgust, others with coldness. In that moment, she wasn't a person. She was just a living reminder that the elite decided who was valuable and who wasn't. Her heart was beating fast, almost painfully. His face burned, but not from shame, it was a mixture of pain, humiliation, and a silent rage that was born deep within his soul. And then, in the midst of the cruel laughter, something changed. She noticed a gaze fixed on her, steady, unwavering, impossible to ignore. Would the prince really stand up in front of everyone? Or would he let her be destroyed right there? As the hall vibrated with muffled laughter, only one man remained motionless. The prince. He didn't laugh, he didn't look away, he didn't feign indifference. His eyes were fixed on the scene, hard, intent, dangerously silent. The maid, still trembling, felt the weight of that gaze. It was as if time had stopped just between the two of them. For a moment, the humiliation and the noise around him disappeared, and only the question remained, what would he do? The elite, busy savoring the cruel spectacle, did not notice the tension growing in the prince's heart. He was heir to a throne, accustomed to obeying protocols, traditions, and political alliances. But there was something about that moment that broke all the rules. His fists clenched discreetly under the table. Every word of mockery against the young woman was like a direct blow to her own honor. But one misstep could mean war, not just with the elite gathered there, but with the entire kingdom. The heiress noticed. With a mischievous smile, he moved even closer to the maid, as if he wanted to test his limits in front of everyone. "See, Prince, this is what happens when someone forgets where they belong." The hall laughed again. But this time, there was something different. Some guests noticed the prince's gaze, steady, almost threatening. And the silence began to spread little by little, like a shadow over the banquet. Would the prince stand up against everyone, or would he let the maid be crushed by the elite's cruelty? The silence that was beginning to spread did not please the heiress. His eyes gleamed with calculated malice. She knew the prince was watching, knew that her every gesture now carried weight. And, precisely for that reason, he decided to go further. With firm steps, she approached the maid, who was still trying in vain to clean her wine-stained dress. The heiress raised the empty cup before her face and said loudly, for all to hear, "Clean this up. That's what you're good for. Nothing but a dirty servant." The hall burst into laughter again. Some guests were banging their hands on the table, as if it were a theater scene made to entertain the elite. The maid, with tears in her eyes, slowly lowered herself, swallowing her pride, trying not to cry in front of everyone. But the heiress was not satisfied. She took another step and, with the heel of her shoe, pushed the maid's hand against the floor, knocking the cloth she was holding off her. "Look carefully, Prince. This is how a servant should be treated. Or would you prefer her to sit next to you at the royal table?" The hall was in shock. The challenge was no longer just against the maid, it was against the prince himself. With each word, the heiress made it clear that this was a direct provocation, a test of power. The maid remained motionless, her face close to the ground, tears falling silently. Her heart seemed to be crying out for help, but no one dared to intervene. Everyone was waiting for just one thing, his reaction. The prince took a deep breath. His eyes were fixed on the scene, his expression unreadable. And in that instant, the fate of the banquet, and the entire kingdom, was about to change. Would the prince remain bound by the crown's silence, or would he dare to defy everyone in the face of such cruelty? The entire hall was waiting. The cruel laughter still echoed, but now mixed with silent anticipation. Everyone wanted to know, would the prince stay by his heiress's side, or would he do the unthinkable? And then it happened. The sound of the chair being dragged broke the heavy silence. The prince stood up. Immediately, all conversation ceased. Eyes turned to him, and even the boldest lowered their voices. The heiress, her heel still pressing against the maid's hand, raised her chin defiantly, as if certain he would confirm her cruelty. But the next words were not what she, or anyone there, expected to hear. "Let her go." His voice echoed firmly, full of authority. It wasn't a request. It was an order. And for the first time that night, the laughter of the elite died. The heiress hesitated, surprised, but tried to maintain control. "Prince, are you defending a servant?" He didn't blink. He just took another step forward. "Not just a servant. A person. And I will not allow her to be humiliated before me." The entire hall was in shock. The murmurs began to grow, like a storm about to explode. Never, at any party, had anyone dared to so openly challenge the heiress and, along with her, the entire elite gathered. The maid, still on the floor, raised her teary eyes. For the first time that night, there was something different there, not just shame or pain, but hope. And at that moment, everyone understood that that decision, simple in appearance, had immense weight. It wasn't just about a maid. It was about challenging hierarchy, breaking traditions, and taking on an entire kingdom. What would happen now that the prince had taken sides in front of everyone? The hall shook. For a moment, there was absolute silence, the kind of silence that precedes a storm. And then, as if a dam had broken, came the murmurs. Low, nervous, rising. Has he gone mad? Defend a maid? This is an affront to the families of the kingdom. The guests looked at each other, scandalized. Businessmen raised their eyebrows in disapproval. Wives whispered behind fans, their eyes venomous. Some even walked away, as if facing an unforgivable crime. The heiress could not contain her fury. His eyes sparkled, the sneer had disappeared. She took a step back, but her voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. "Prince, are you willing to tarnish your family name because of a servant girl?" The impact was immediate. The words fell like stones across the hall. Some nodded, reinforcing the accusation. Others laughed, now not at the maid, but at his audacity. The prince, however, did not back down. His gaze remained steady, his posture erect, as if he carried the weight of an entire throne on his shoulders. But inside, he knew that gesture could not be erased. From that moment on, nothing would be the same again. The maid, still on the floor, felt torn between fear and disbelief. No one had ever come to his defense. But would that protect her, or put her in even more danger? The hall was bustling. The elite demanded silence, order, submission. But he had already broken through the barrier. And in doing so, he had lit the flame of a scandal that would echo far beyond that night. Question mark. Would the prince bear the brunt of the consequences, or would he retreat in the face of the elite's fury? The hall felt like a silent battlefield. On one side, the elite furious, demanding that the prince back down. On the other, the maid kneeling, her dress stained and her face streaked with tears, unable to believe what she had just heard. The prince took a deep breath. His eyes swept over every face around, from the older nobles to the young heirs who laughed at question mark. The misfortune of others. He knew, any word he said would be final. And yet he did not hesitate. He took another step forward, stopping in front of the maid. With a firm gesture, he extended his hand to her. A shock ran through the hall. Some recoiled, as if seeing a direct affront to their own royal blood. His voice echoed clear, without tremor. "From today onwards, no one will dare to humiliate her again. Before all of you, I choose her." The words exploded like thunder in the hearts of the elite. There were screams, protests, looks of pure hatred. The heiress let out a sigh of stifled rage, unable to believe what she was hearing. "You will destroy the kingdom with this choice," she snapped, her voice shaking between fury and fear. But he didn't back down. He lifted the maid up in front of everyone, making it clear that there was no turning back. It wasn't just a passing defense. It was a decision, the most shocking ever made in the midst of that palace. The maid, still without the strength to believe, looked at him with tears that now mixed pain and hope. For the first time in her life, someone had seen beyond the dirt on her uniform, beyond her cruel laughter. And in that instant, before everyone's eyes, she stopped being just a rejected servant. She had become the prince's choice. And with that, the entire kingdom would be forced to face a new truth. Question mark. What would happen after that decision? Would it be the beginning of an impossible love, or an unprecedented war within the court? The hall plunged into chaos. Some screamed in shock, others left the party as if they were witnessing sacrilege. The heiress, unable to hide her fury, let out a scream that echoed between the golden walls. "You'll regret this, prince. This won't end here." Her look was more than anger. It was a promise of revenge. And everyone knew, a scorned heiress would not rest until she regained the power she believed she had lost. The maid, still trembling, was lifted up by the prince's firm hands. But inside her, her heart wavered between two truths. The hope of finally being seen, and the fear of having become the target of a war she could not win. The nobles murmured among themselves, speaking of broken alliances, ruined marriages, and defied traditions. Every word spoken that night would spread like wildfire through the palace corridors and the streets of the kingdom. And everyone knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The prince kept his gaze steady. He didn't regret his choice. But in his eyes there was a quiet heaviness, the recognition that by raising this maid before everyone, he had begun something no one could control. The heiress, now standing back, watched in silence. His lips curved in a cold smile revealed more than words, she was already planning the counterattack. The maid felt her body shiver. It wasn't just a story of humiliation and redemption. It was the beginning of a greater battle, where every gesture would be charged with blood, power and pain. And while the hall still seethed with echoes of indignation, a certainty hung in the air like an inevitable shadow. The prince's most shocking decision had changed not only the life of a servant girl, but the fate of an entire kingdom. Question mark. Would this be the flame of an impossible love, or the prelude to a war that would destroy everything?
Hey, did you like this story? Then hit subscribe to Between Lies and Love so you won't miss the next chapters. Don't forget to like this video. It really helps us bring you more emotional, anime-style K-drama stories. And I want to know, what was your favorite part of this story? What do you think we could do better in the next episodes? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and your idea might even show up in the next video. So subscribe, like, comment, and join this family that loves drama, twists, and unforgettable stories.